For 4 years, Ukraine has been fighting Russia with weapons it received from the West. Now Ukraine is selling weapons to the world, and the first customers are the nations that border the Strait of Hormuz. On April 19, 2026, President Volodymyr Zelensky announced something that should be understood as one of the most significant strategic shifts of this entire war, not just for Ukraine, but for the global balance of power in an era defined by drone warfare. Ukraine has signed 10-year defense export agreements with Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar. The agreements cover drone technology, counter-drone systems, integrated air defense, and the direct deployment of Ukrainian specialists to protect critical infrastructure across the Gulf region. Zelensky confirmed that over 200 Ukrainian counter-drone experts have already been deployed across the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, and Jordan. Not as advisors, not as trainers, but as active defense operators who have already shot down Iranian Shahed drones in the field. Did we destroy Iranian Shaheds? Zelensky said in an interview. Yes, we did. Did we do it in just one country? No, in several. Tonight, we go inside what Ukraine's Gulf deployment actually means. Why Saudi Arabia and the UAE, two of the world's wealthiest nations, equipped with Patriot missile batteries and THAAD systems costing hundreds of millions of dollars, are lining up to buy drone technology from a country that is itself at war. Why Zelensky called this move a new front against Russia, and what it tells us about the future of warfare, not just in Ukraine, not just in the Middle East, but globally. Because what Ukraine is selling to the Gulf is not just hardware, it is something far more valuable and far more difficult to replicate. It is 4 years of real-world experience against the most intense drone campaign in the history of warfare. To understand why Gulf states are paying for Ukrainian expertise, you need to understand what happened when Iran began deploying Shahed 136 kamikaze drones at scale. First against Ukrainian cities starting in September 2022, then against Gulf state infrastructure and U.S. military assets in the context of Operation Epic Fury, beginning in late February 2026. The Shahed 136 is a one-way attack drone. It costs approximately $30,000 to $130,000 per unit. It is not sophisticated by Western military standards. It flies slowly, it is relatively noisy, it can be detected by radar. In theory, it should be easy to shoot down. In practice, when you are launching them in swarms of 50, 100, or 200 simultaneously, against targets protected by air defense systems designed to intercept ballistic missiles and fast-moving aircraft, the cheap drone overwhelms the expensive interceptor. Saudi Arabia's Patriot batteries and UAE's THAAD systems can intercept Shaheds. But each Patriot PAC-3 missile costs approximately $4 million. Each THAAD interceptor costs approximately $12 million. Using a $4 million missile to shoot down a $100,000 drone is economically unsustainable at scale. In a sustained drone campaign, the attacker wins economically, even if the defender wins kinetically. Ukraine figured this out the hard way. Against nearly 60,000 Russian-launched Shahed-type drones since September 2022, and Ukraine's solution was not to spend more money on more expensive interceptors. It was to develop its own interceptor drones, one-way attack drones designed specifically to intercept other one-way attack drones, costing approximately $2,000 each, against a Shahed costing $130,000, an economic ratio of 1 to 65 in the defender's favor. In March 2026, Ukrainian interceptor drones accounted for approximately 70% of all Russian Shaheds destroyed, more than 33,000 drones downed by interceptors in a single month. Ukraine's overall drone interception rate reached nearly 90%. These are numbers that no air defense system in the world, using conventional expensive interceptors, has ever approached. This is what the Gulf states are buying, not a weapon, an economic model of drone defense that actually works at scale against mass drone attacks, proven in the most intense real-world testing environment imaginable. And the price Ukraine is asking in return is not dollars, it is interceptors. Zelensky has been explicit about the transactional logic. Ukraine will trade its counter-drone expertise and its interceptor drone technology for PAC-3 missiles, the high-end ballistic missile interceptors that Ukraine desperately needs to defend against Russia's ballistic missile attacks on Ukrainian cities, but cannot obtain in sufficient quantities from Western partners. Gulf states have PAC-3 inventories they are willing to trade. Ukraine has counter-drone expertise. Gulf states cannot develop independently. The exchange makes both parties more secure. But Ukraine is also accepting payment in crude oil and diesel, a calculation that tells you something important about how Kiev is thinking about the economic sustainability of its war effort. Ukraine needs fuel. Russia's attempts to destroy Ukrainian energy infrastructure have created fuel supply vulnerabilities. Gulf states have oil, and an agreement that pays Ukraine for defense services in oil rather than dollars creates a resilient supply chain that bypasses the political uncertainties of Western budget cycles. Zelensky called the framework a drone deal. He said the concept was originally developed for the United States. He personally pitched it to Trump as an alternative structure for U.S.-Ukraine defense cooperation. Trump did not move forward with it. So Zelensky took it to Riyadh, Abu Dhabi, and Doha, and they said yes. 10-year agreements, with Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar confirmed. Negotiations ongoing with Oman, Kuwait, and Bahrain. Requests from 11 additional countries across the Middle East, the Gulf, and the Caucasus. Ukraine's defense production capacity, which has grown 35 times since the invasion began, from $1 billion to $35 billion in annual production, has surplus capacity in several categories that domestic Ukrainian military demand cannot absorb. Ukraine has gone from aid recipient to arms exporter in 4 years, while fighting a war. Now let us talk about what this means for Russia. Because Zelensky's framing, he called the Gulf deployment a new front against Russia, is not hyperbole. It is a precise geopolitical description. Iran and Russia have been deeply intertwined in this war. Iran supplied Russia with the Shahed drones that Russia has been using to destroy Ukrainian cities. Russia provided Iran with diplomatic cover at the United Nations, intelligence support, and weapons technology in return. The two countries built what Western intelligence agencies described as a genuine defense production partnership. Iran manufacturing drones, Russia deploying them, both countries benefiting from a war that kept Western attention and resources focused on Eastern Europe. Ukraine's Gulf deployment directly attacks that partnership from an angle Russia did not anticipate. By deploying Ukrainian counter-drone specialists to Gulf states and helping them develop effective defenses against Iranian Shaheds, using the same techniques Ukraine developed against Russian-deployed Shaheds, Ukraine is simultaneously protecting Gulf infrastructure, demonstrating to Iran that its primary asymmetric weapon is now countered, and building a defense partnership network across the Gulf that creates strategic dependencies, pulling those nations closer to Kiev and further from Tehran and Moscow. Zelensky confirmed that Ukrainian specialists have directly participated in shooting down Iranian Shahed drones in multiple Gulf countries. Ukraine, a country fighting for its survival against Russia, is now actively degrading Iranian drone effectiveness in the Gulf. In the same operational environment where the Iran-America war is playing out, disrupting the economic logic of Iran's drone campaign against Gulf infrastructure, creating a new strategic alignment between Kyiv and Riyadh, Abu Dhabi, and Doha that has implications far beyond the immediate tactical context. And Russia is watching its Iranian partner's most effective weapon being systematically countered by the very country Russia has been trying to destroy for 4 years. There is also a dimension that has received almost no attention in Western media, but is quietly reshaping the geopolitics of this war. Ukraine is deploying more than 200 specialists across 5 Gulf countries at a moment when those same Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, are among the most important interlocutors in the Iran-America peace process. They are the countries that convinced Trump to delay his strike on Iran on May 19th. They are the countries hosting Pakistani mediation efforts. They are the countries with the most economic leverage over both Washington and Tehran. Ukraine now has deep defense relationships with all of them. Zelensky has visited Riyadh, Abu Dhabi, and Doha. Ukrainian specialists are on the ground in their military facilities. 10-year agreements are signed. These relationships give Ukraine a channel into the Gulf states' diplomatic calculations that Kiev did not have a year ago, and that Moscow cannot match. Russia has no comparable relationships in the Gulf. Saudi Arabia is furious at Russia for its support of Iran. The UAE has been quietly distancing itself from Russian positions at the United Nations. Qatar, which hosts the Al Udeid Air Base, the largest U.S. military facility in the Middle East, has every incentive to support the country that is helping defend its infrastructure against Iranian drones. Ukraine opened a new front against Russia not on a battlefield, in a boardroom, in a defense ministry, on a runway at an Emirati airbase where a Ukrainian specialist just shot down an Iranian drone using technology developed against Russian weapons. This is the geopolitics of drone warfare in 2026. And Zelensky, the man who was given 72 hours to survive in February 2022, has understood it more clearly than almost anyone else in the world. Ukraine's air defense secrets are now in the Gulf. Russia's Iranian partner is finding its primary weapon countered by the country Russia tried to erase. And Zelensky has 11 more countries in his queue. The new front is open, and it is just getting started.